In a livestream broadcasted on October 7th, the Diablo 4 developers teased a couple of the new Vampiric Powers from Season 2. From what we can see so far, some look like they're pretty good, and others not so much. Later that day, the Diablo 4 website received an updated news post detailing all of the Season 2 Vampiric Powers. Let's go over all 22 Vampiric Powers and make predictions on which combinations are going to be the new meta. Before we get to it, let's quickly go over what we know about Vampiric Powers. To learn Vampiric Powers, you'll first need to collect potent blood from enemies. Potent blood can also upgrade a Vampiric Power you've already learned up to a maximum of 3. To activate a Vampiric Power, we have to meet their activation cost by using Pacts. Every piece of armor we get in Season 2 will have randomly rolled Pacts on them. By doing Blood Harvest, a new Season 2 event similar to Helltide, we get points that we can use to remove Pacts or inject Pacts into armor. The maximum amount of Pacts a piece of armor can have is 5. Pacts will have 3 types: Divinity, Ferocity, and Eternity. Vampiric Powers will be slotted into new UI element called the Sanguine Circle. As you can see, there's a total of 5 Vampiric Powers that can be active at once, and that's pretty much it. It's time to go over Vampiric Powers. We still don't know what the new uniques, legendary aspects, and wereglyphs are yet, so keep in mind it's early speculation. Anticipation. Your ultimate skills gain 20% cooldown reduction. Your ultimate skills gain 12% increased damage for each nearby enemy affected by your damage over time effects. This power is going to be great on necromancers that use miasma with corpse explosion, or sorcerers that use blizzard and have a lot of cooldowns. Bone Storm on necromancer adds an ungodly amount of survivability. Cooldown reduction was already best in slot on necros using this build, and the Vampiric Power Anticipation is easily going to make it a solid S tier. The ideal time for using Bone Storm was when you're in a group of tough enemies, and with the legendary aspect that changes Bone Storm to shadow damage, this is going to be a ton of damage. Coven's Fangs. Your Conjuration, Companion, Minion, and Bat Familiar attacks deal 52% increased damage to crowd-controlled enemies. Lucky Hit. Your Conjuration, Companion, Minion, and Bat Familiar have up to a 30% chance to inflict Vampiric Curse when hitting enemies. Vampiric Curse seems like it's going to be an important aspect in Season 2. This Vampiric Power isn't going to be the only way to inflict this status effect. We'll see how the damage rework in Season 2 goes, but Companions on Druid are bad, Sorcerer Conjurations aren't super great either, so we'll see about this one. Domination. You deal 24% increased damage to enemies who are stunned, immobilized, frozen, or feared. If they're also injured and not an elite, they're instantly killed. This could potentially be good if you're able to consistently stun, immobilize, or freeze, otherwise it's a bust. A lot of classes will daze, knock down, or slow enemies like Rogue, but Sorcerer does a good job at this with Immobilize on Pyromancy skills and freezing enemies with Frost Nova. Feed the Coven. Lucky Hit. Conjuration, Companion, Minion, and Bat Familiar attacks have up to a 60% chance to restore 10 primary resource to you and increase your damage by 10% for 4 seconds. I'm starting to see a pattern here, with attempting to buff Conjuration, Companion, and Minions, which have been problematic in the past. Druid and Sorcerer are known to be resource hungry, so this might be the developer's way of making companions on classes more useful. I just don't know if this will be enough. Hectic. For every 5 basic skills you cast, one of your active cooldowns is reduced by 2 seconds. The first thing I think of when I read this is Combo Point Rogue. Rogue has a unique dagger that makes combo points better than doing resource burn by using Inner Sight. I mean, this also could work if we had more competitive options for classes to use basic attacks as the main damage source in their build. This might be great for Necromancer and Barbarians. Rogue already has a keystone that makes cooldowns trivial anyway. Chemomancy. Your attacks deal 80% of your maximum life as physical damage to nearby enemies. This can only occur once every 4 seconds. You heal for 1% of the maximum life for each enemy damaged this way. So there's a lot of builds that go for high maximum life. I believe Bloodlance Necromancer, Overpowered Druid, and I think Thorn Barbarians go for high max life too. This might be a good way to make a tanky build stronger, but not overpowered. 1% max lifesteal every 4 seconds sounds like it'd be worse than the affix Life on Kill. It's just such a small amount that it's just not meaningful, especially after getting one-shot by a corpse bow. Infection. Hitting enemies with direct damage infects them with Pox. Inflicting Pox 8 times on an enemy expunges their infection, dealing 70% poison damage. At first glance, this seems pretty terrible. I'm pretty sure druids have a legendary aspect like this, and even at 200%, it's pretty bad. Maybe this will make more sense with the damage rework. Jagged Spikes. Thorns have a 10% chance to deal 300% damage and chill enemies for 8%. This vampiric power is totally for all the Thorn Barbarians out there. Good luck fighting the Butcher, guys, especially if his pathing doesn't get a bug fix. Prey on the Weak. You deal 16% damage to vulnerable enemies. Enemies are vulnerable while affected by a vampiric curse from your other vampiric powers. As damage currently stands, this would be a must-have on every class and every build. Until we know what the damage rework is going to mean, this vampiric power is either meta or off meta. I hope vulnerability isn't useless in Season 2, but if it is, Prey on the Weak is an absolute trap for people who don't read the patch notes. Rampart. After not moving for 3 seconds, you gain a barrier for 40% of your maximum life for 6 seconds. This effect can occur once every 20 seconds. I have very mixed feelings on any passives, legendary aspects, or I guess vampiric powers that have a condition for standing still. This vampiric power will be awesome for players that are pushing high-tier nightmare dungeons and need some extra survivability. Otherwise, standing still just means you're going to slow down your clear times and ruin your efficiency. This is the same reason players hate the Lightning Storm affliction on Nightmare Sigils. Ravenous, Lucky Hit, up to a 20% chance to increase your attack speed by 40% of your total movement speed for 6 seconds. Ravenous is obviously going to be class agnostic, as most builds are going to have movement speed on boots and probably on your amulet. Even if you only get 120% total move speed, this will be a 40% bonus to attack speed, which is pretty big. Most builds that don't rely on cooldowns to deal damage are going to like this, and any builds that need better resource generation are going to love this. Rogues using Puncture for combo points, druids proccing vulnerable with Storm Strike, and even Bone Spear Necros are going to love this vampiric power in their kit. Resilience. You gain 1% damage reduction for each 2% life you are missing. To me, this is too conditional and kind of boring. Damage reduction is great, just not when it's too conditional. It might be okay to have early game, but it's not going to work in the late game. Sanguine Brace. When you kill an enemy, fortify 6% of your base life. While you have more fortify than half of your maximum life, you gain 8% critical strike chance. To me, this is S rank for any builds that generate Fortify. Even Minion Necromancer and Corpse Explosion Necromancer could use this, and it would be great to have. So even if your build isn't centered around Fortify, it'll allow you to add tankiness to your build and get damage out of it at the same time. Crit chance can be so hard to get from accessories and gloves, so I'm really looking forward to how players are going to use this vampiric power. Terror. When struck, you have a 14% chance to fear nearby enemies and slow them by 80% for 2 seconds. You are guaranteed to critically strike enemies who are feared. I really can't tell if this is going to be an unlikely proc or if this will be super practical to use in combat. Getting struck makes me believe this won't be good on glass cannons, but more for Pulverize or Bulwark druids, or like a Thorns Barbarian. I'm on the fence about this one. It could go either way. Undying. Casting skills heals you for 3% life. Double this bonus while below 50% life. Undying is going to add a lot of survivability to any class that have skills that are spammable. Deathblow on Barbarian can be pretty spammable. Firewall on Sorcerer, and definitely Corpse Explosion on Necromancer. You can mash Corpse Explosion for as many corpses as you want almost instantly, making this vampiric power an extra potion basically. Is it practical though? I guess if you're desperate enough. Accursed Touch. Lucky Hit. Up to a 40% chance to inflict Vampiric Curse on enemies. Enemies with the Vampiric Curse have a 15% chance to spread it to other surrounding enemies. Accursed Souls deal 200% increased damage. Accursed Touch paired with Prey on the Weak could potentially be one of the best wombo combos of Season 2. If I understood the livestream correctly, using a defensive skill activates the Accursed Souls portion of the vampiric power. When they said vampiric powers are class agnostic, I think of this one. It looks pretty good, we'll just have to see. Bathe in Blood. While channeling a skill, you form a pool of blood beneath you. While channeling a skill in a pool, your channeled skills deal 40% increased damage and you gain 30% damage reduction. A pool can only form once every 8 seconds. This vampiric power is an instant F tier for me. Besides Incinerate on Sorcerer, I just can't think of any channeled abilities. Is Whirlwind on Barbarian considered a channeled ability? If you know of any channeled abilities, just let me know in the comments. Blood Boil. When your core skills overpower an enemy, you spawn 3 volatile blood drops. Collecting a volatile blood drop causes it to explode, dealing 60% physical damage around you. Every 20 seconds, your next skill is guaranteed to overpower. I can see a huge synergy for overpowered builds with this Vampiric Power, especially for builds that need more wave clearing damage. This Vampiric Power is going to be S tier for some builds. So for example, I don't see this being used for Sorcerer, but I do see it being used on Bloodlance Necro. Call Familiar. Casting a Mastery, Weapon Mastery, Macabre, Wrath, or Imbuement skill calls a bat ally to attack nearby enemies, dealing 80% physical damage with a 30% chance to stun. If you have a build that uses a companion, conjuration, or minion, pair this Vampiric Power with Feed the Coven and Coven's Fang. It obviously has great synergy and could be really successful. It all depends on the damage rework and what the results are. This would be an example of a way to add utility, resource, and extra damage to an already powerful build that doesn't have any other options. Flowing Veins. You deal 60% increased damage over time to enemies that are moving or affected by a vampiric curse. I have a feeling damage over time builds are going to be a central focus of the new damage rework coming to Season 2. Damage over time builds, for the most part, don't scale, unless they have a legendary aspect or unique item that adds either a damage tag or some other type of damage to the damage over time effect. Since damage over time isn't able to crit, and all of the multipliers that increase damage to damage over time are all lumped together in the additive damage bucket, damage over time is currently just in a bad spot. I hope Ren Barbarian gets a lot of love in this upcoming patch. Metamorphosis. When you evade, you turn into a cloud of bats, becoming unstoppable for 4 seconds. Enemies along your path take 160% physical damage and are inflicted with Vampiric Curse. So Metamorphosis is definitely going to be class agnostic, and a must-have for any builds that is pushing high-tier Nightmare dungeons. First off, because it makes you unstoppable, which is invaluable to every class in the game. And this new Vampiric Curse effect might be super impactful when it comes to dealing damage in Season 2. Every build is probably going to require this in their loadout. Moonrise. Hitting an enemy with a basic skill grants you 4% attack speed for 10 seconds, stacking up to 5 times. Upon reaching maximum stacks, you enter a Vampiric Blood Rage, gaining 160% basic skill damage and a 15% movement speed for 10 seconds. Once again, it looks like we have more options for making a successful basic attack build. I'm really excited to see basic attacks potentially become a thing in Season 2. I'm not too sure if it's going to be considered meta, but it would be cool to see it happen. When the developers say they want to empower as many kinds of builds and playstyles as possible, this might just give some players the ability to finally achieve their basic attack fantasy. And that's it for all 22 Vampiric Powers. If you disagreed with any points I made, feel free to drop a comment with the reason why. If you found this video helpful, hit the like and subscribe button. Thanks for watching, good luck, and have fun.